Hello, my name is Neal, and I've been asked, in the service of the curiosity of the Clerical Errors podcast, by their superfan and world-famous church musician, Baron Albatross, to do some research on a weather prediction model surrounding the Ember days of the church calendar. Now, when I was initially handed this project, I had to do quite a bit of research. If you asked me then what I knew about it, then, well, my answer would be not much unlike some of the people which I interviewed as part of the project.
Okay, so I've just stopped Jeremiah, and we are going to ask him a little bit about this. So, Jeremiah, what do you know about the Ember days?
Not much of anything at all.
Okay, Pedro, what do you know about the Ember days?
Nothing.
Okay, that's great. So let me explain what they are to you briefly.
So this research project focuses on the Ember days of Advent, which basically the model dictates that the Wednesday, the Friday, and the Saturday after the Feast of St. Lucy on December the 13th are penitential days, but these days will predict the average weather of January, February, and March, respectively.
So how does that strike you? What do you think about that?
Weather's a wild thing.
You could not have said it better. Now, so just all your first impressions. What do you think about that? Do you think that might work?
Maybe not so much.
You don't think so? Okay. Well, hey, that's fair enough. Because why would it? Why do you think it should? Okay, that's great. I want you to come and look at my data real quick.
Okay, now let's look at the data here. So, what I did is I gathered weather data from the internet, and I went all the way back to 2014, and I took the data for 2024 fresh live. So the location of this study is Moline, Illinois. And that's where it'd been, so that's where I took the data. And okay, and if you look here, I compiled it all into these little lists, and so you can see temperatures and then monthly averages. So here's your Wednesday, and then there's January. So then there's your average high. So then you have correlation here. But like as you've seen, I made this series of charts so that it's easy to quickly just take a look at it. So if you look here, the top chart, we have a blue line that represents percentage deviation. So the green line is would be a perfect correlation between the weather of, say, the Wednesday and January, or so on and so forth. So so you see here that the line goes up and down and up and down and all over It ranges to just over 50% of the average to about 250%. And it's interesting, to look at the times when this happened. I don't think that's irrelevant data. But you see it goes up and down and up and down. And down in this bottom chart, you see the difference in actual degrees. So your zero line is here. And then, so sometimes a little lower, sometimes it's a little higher, right? Okay. And then, and here, it shows the, in orange, the actual temperature of the month versus the anticipated temperature according to the day. So that's what you got there. But I want to bring your attention to this chart. I think that this is an interesting point in the data, is that if you take the average of all these 10 years, that's where you get the orange line, and it is almost a perfect correlation to the between the months and the Ember days. But as you can see, it's not terribly consistent in this 10-year sample. So if it's 2017 and you're wanting to make important decisions based on the average temperature of the month, you're not going to be having a good time with that. There's going to be things happening you didn't expect in the weather, So I personally have some questions about the contemporary reliability of the model, and I wonder, this is where we have to ask the question: is why was this model kept up for so long, and why did they continue to use this model if it was unreliable? I have to assume personally, and I think my research bore this out, that the model had been more reliable in the past, and so the next question is why.
Okay, so now that you've looked at the data that I compiled in my research, now what do you think about the relevance of using this method to predict the weather?
I think it's only right unless we have a Democrat in office.
So you think that the accuracy of predicting the weather according to the Ember days is valid as long as we have a Democrat in office, okay? Is that right?
No, when we have a Republican in office.
When we have a Republican in office, it works.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Very good. Very good. You did notice those deviations. And now, for what reason do you think that having a Democrat or a Republican in office would affect the accuracy of this model?
Because the Ember days are talking about a sacred fast that helps us to understand the world. But when these sinning Democrats come in and try to ruin this country to be more sinful and vicious than in years past, well, it's this time that the augurial nature of the fasting seasons is thrown all out of whack. In the same way that the Israelites were overcome every single time they departed from God, we are unable to understand the nature around us unless we have a Republican in office.
I think that there's something to that, because like you said, when the Luciferian globalist Demo-Commie party is in office, we see so much work towards spiritual disruption, and the powers and principalities of the air really do seem to be at work, particularly attacking the weather and the ecology. So, thank you very much. You have any final thoughts?
No.
That's great. Don't think too much; you'll get in trouble. Okay, Pedro, you've seen the data. So what do you think about this model now that you've seen what we've been looking at over the past 10 years?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. It's not too bad. I think we could use it to our advantage.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. Now, in the early Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, we published an almanac which actually used these Ember days to predict the weather, and it was depended on very heavily for farming and other lifestyle activities, right? So now, I was concerned when I was doing the research, if I was a farmer, I might not want to rely on this data completely because there is some significant deviation some years. So do you think that the model could perhaps have been more reliable in the past? And if so, why do you think it might have changed in the present?
Global warming.
Wow. He just lays it out. Thanks, buddy. You have a great day. It's been very nice talking to you. Thank you. Okay, so I have with me to help to explain the anomalies in the data an expert on esoteric archaeology, ancient civilization, and astral phenomenon. Norbert, what can you tell us about this seemingly poor correlation between the weather patterns predicted by the Ember Days model and the actual results that we got in this sample period from 2014 to 2024?
Well, there are a variety of factors at play in the data. First of all, is the development of the church year was prior to Galileo's moving the cosmos such that the Earth was no longer the center of the universe. You see, once he did that, the weather patterns shifted, and we have much reliable evidence from the Aztecs that this shift not only caused the mass extinction of intellectuals, but also caused the mass extinction of meteorologists. So when we're looking at the data, we're dealing with a very bad data set. But we also have to contend with the fact that Obama continued Galileo's movement of the universe, and now the sun is off kilter. So when you account for that, you can extrapolate the consequences, and utilizing what little we know of Aztec astral alignment and the specific degrees of Celsioid energy contained not only in the sun, but also in the sun's children, the clouds. Then you can map the correlations back into the historical matrices, such that the weather prediction becomes infinitely more accurate.
I understand. Now, it's my understanding that the Atlanteans previously had used this model quite effectively. But yeah, how you're putting it, it sounds like the efficacy of the model continues to deteriorate as we get closer to the contemporary period, as these resources such as meteorologists and intellectuals begin to degrade and die away, up until the point where Obama makes the final push. Is that about what you're trying to say?
Well, you're dealing with several very complicated junctures in human history. The Atlanteans certainly had a model, but the innovation, the great period of innovation between the Atlanteans and the Aztecs made it such that the old model is entirely defunct. So all we have is a recovery of the Aztec model. And while you do point out some very important aspects of the way in which the innovations that we have access to do inform our perception of these astrological phenomena, you are still going to be hampering the development of a further model until we can recenter the universe back on Earth. The geocentric model is what the Aztecs were working with. It was their innovation from the Atlanteans. Obama's trying to turn us back to Atlantis, the New World Order, the globalists, for example. They all want to control the weather in these ways, and the only way that we have to fight back against them is to give the church year once again power to control the weather.
That makes sense to me. So then, for us in the Lutheran Church here in America, when our forefathers came up the Mississippi River into the heart of the Tartarian Empire, they still had the knowledge preserved, until about after the Chicago World Fair, right? So So that's why in our old almanacs, then they still had this working. But now, when we try to apply the same thing today, then it all just kind of falls apart. Thank you for your insight and help on this. Do you have any last comments that might provide a little more elucidation to the listener?
Just one thing that the listener might find interesting. Pope Francis knows something that Obama doesn't, and that is that effecting a 3-year lectionary across the world is the final push that we need to end the Ember Days' ability to control the weather.
Okay, 10 points to Gottesdienst. Thank you so much, Norbert. I really appreciate you taking the time out of the day.
Well, there you have it, folks. Starting with Galileo and Obama and the Pope, we can see that it will be increasingly difficult to use traditional models like the Ember Days to predict the weather which is coming to us in the future on account of these wicked men and the immense wrath of God poured out over the amazing bloodshed which we spill into the open mouth of the earth every day in this land. Stay safe and stay informed. Neal out.